Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Kelly Horton. I'm with the marketing team here at ShipHawk, joined by Autumn Rexford, our solutions consultant, who many of you know and have been participating in this series of webinars over the last several months. Looks like we've got some folks still joining in, so we'll just take a few more seconds. And while we're waiting for a few others to join us, I'll go ahead and just kind of go through our housekeeping items today. Just so everyone's aware, you will be receiving a link to the recording from the webinar today. So usually within about 24 hours, you'll receive an email with a link to watch the on-demand version of the webinar. So if you want to go back and rewatch or share with any of your colleagues, you can certainly do that. Definitely use the Q&A box, the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. We want to hear your questions as Autumn's going through today. If you have any questions, feel free to submit those. We will try to address those as we go. If not, we'll definitely have some time at the end, or make sure, if we don't get to every question by the end of the webinar today, we'll make sure to reach out to you and get an answer over your way. And lastly, tell us what you think. At the end of the webinar, a super short survey will pop up on your screen. We definitely would love to hear your feedback about today. So please take a few seconds and do that as well. So like I said, we wanted to just kind of cover a few housekeeping items. I know we have a lot of customers on the call today that have been following along with us throughout this series, but for those of you that have not attended our previous webinars, part of this life cycle of an order series, I'm actually going to put a link into the chat box real quick for the landing page, so you can go back and see all the previous sessions that we've had and go back and watch any of those webinars on demand as well. Let me just put that in the chat before I forget. You can see all of the previous webinars. So throughout this series, we've actually been talking about two life cycles happening, at the same time. First is this actual fulfillment operation life cycle in this outer ring, and the second is the customer experience. So the goal with these has been to show you the full scope of the ShipHawk fulfillment management solutions and how these enable you to streamline every step of your fulfillment process with one end-to-end platform. So hopefully we've been able to accomplish that. I love that we continue to see so many repeat attendees, as well as our new faces. And as I mentioned, this is our second to last session in the series. Next week, we'll cover the last component, and that will be a chance for you to see how our handheld dimensioner can easily capture weights and dimensions and really close the loop on that fulfillment cycle for you. And you can use that link I put in the chat. There's a link to the Dimensioner webinar registration page. So if you haven't signed up for that, you can certainly do so. And one last thing before I hand it over to Autumn, I want to do a quick polling question just to kind of see who we've got here with us today and find out if you're already using the audit solution, or maybe it's something you're just looking to get some more information on. So if you'll take just a few seconds and pick your answer here, yes or no. And while you're doing that, I want to quickly reference for our customers, we are going to host another session later this month specifically for you with Josh Jensen, who's now our Director of Account Management, but previously was one of our product leaders who actually helped develop the audit tool. He'll be joined by our Customer Account Manager, Ravi Rao. They will share top tips for this solution, some actual use cases from customers that have been able to recover thousands of dollars in carrier invoice errors and prevent them from happening in the future. So if you're a customer, you can look for that invite to come soon. And looks like everybody has filled out our survey. So it actually looks like pretty much everybody is not using the audit solution yet. It looks like some of you may be sort of in the implementation process. And so this is great. So what Autumn's going to give you is a real, overview of how it all kind of works and give you the high level, preview of it so everybody can get a good glimpse of it in real life. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Autumn, to start the demo.
Awesome. So for those of you who have been kind of around for this whole series, we've talked all the way through receiving to picking, packing, shipping. But what about after shipping, right? So what about making sure that your carriers are actually invoicing you the proper amount and delivering on time? So today we're going to be kind of talking about that with our audit platform. So when I say audit, what am I actually talking about? So I'm talking about gathering up your invoices from carriers and examining them to make sure they charge you for the correct service, they didn't add extra fees that they shouldn't have, and actually delivered to the standard that you booked. You'll want to audit to make sure you're being charged properly. And if you're not, you'll want to actually go to those carriers and recover those extra costs that they've charged you. So there's audit and then there's recovery. And then we'll also use a third term, reconciliation. And I'll explain what we mean by that in a little bit. So at ShipHawk, we have an additional service and platform that we refer to as our ShipHawk Freight Audit. And today we're going to jump into that platform, talk about the functions it performs, including how we're centralizing and normalizing your invoices. So we'll bring all those in. We'll kind of talk about that, how we audit those and the audit points we're actually reviewing, how we perform the recovery process for you if you want us to do that piece of it as well, and a whole host of reporting and analytics that also comes with our audit platform. So first, let's take a look at your invoices. So I've talked to customers and I say, hey, how do you guys audit today? And some of them are spending 3 to 4 hours a week, literally just gathering up all of their invoices. And sometimes they're not even checking them. They're just gathering them to organize them and sort them in a filing cabinet. Because it takes a really long time sometimes to get all your invoices, right? You may be getting some through email, you may be getting some through EDI, you may be getting some through a carrier portal, you may be getting some literally mailed to you, and you have to go through those, you have to sort through them. Sometimes they send you the invoice multiple times. So you're checking, hey, have I already received this invoice? Is this an extra copy? Do I need to put that, file that away? Is that really something I need? And so I have literally talked to customers that are spending, one person is spending 3 to 4 hours literally just doing that, just gathering them up and organizing them and not even checking them, right? Or I've also talked to customers who are doing maybe a spot check and they say, hey, we check and just kind of do a quick check for, really large charges or duplicate charges, or like maybe they're spot checking 1 or 2 things, but they don't really have the time to look through all those invoices, compare side by side to what they actually shipped, making sure they're getting, no extra charges, no random fees they're not expecting. So what we can do is we can actually get all of your invoices through all those different methods. So whether you're getting those through email, through, actual mail, through EDI, through a carrier portal, whatever it is, we can actually get all of those into our system and centralize those invoices for you and also normalize them, because carriers call different services different things. So it's hard to compare side by side if you're just looking at them, but we'll normalize that data as far as the accessorials, those extra surcharges and fees go, and bring them all into one place so you don't have to spend time gathering them all. You'll just have them available to you. So it means that your invoices become searchable, comparable, and you'll have every shipment and tracking number in one place. And you won't have to spend time going into all those different carrier portals anytime you do want to kind of drill into something. So let's take a look at that now. So I'm going to jump over to our actual platform here. And I've gone ahead and said, hey, I want to go to my invoice search here. I've, put my client in here. So that would just be your guys' company name. And I said, you know what, show me all my FedEx invoices here. You can also search by a specific invoice number or tracking number if you're looking for something specific. But I went ahead and searched here, and you can actually see all of my invoices from FedEx are here. Shows me the account number, the invoice amount, bill date, and I can drill into them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drill into one here. And it's going to show me, well, on that invoice, here's all those different tracking numbers I had, the service that was used, the delivery status, the charges there. And I can even drill into those tracking numbers as well. So I can say, hey, with this tracking number, give me some more information about that. Was it on time? What was my actual weight versus my bill weight? My dimensions that were shipped. And then that breakdown of all those charges there. So my different surcharges and my discount, the service I use, and then my actual charge that I was charged or should have been, right? So not only are we bringing in all of your invoices, but we're also going to work with you guys to get your agreements with your carriers. So we know, based on your carrier negotiations, what you should be charged for different services, for those different fees. So we'll be able to actually look at those invoices, look at your carrier negotiations and say, hey, did they charge you what you guys actually worked out with them, according to your agreement? So one thing is it's all available to you. It's in the system. You can dig into anything you want, but what are we doing with those invoices, right? So we're bringing in all those invoices and we're actually going to audit all of those for you. So with that, we're going to audit every single shipment. And here we'll see our inventory or our invoice search here again, right? We kind of saw this. You can drill into those different ones as well. But we're going to bring those in and we're going to audit every single shipment with every carrier. And so, like I said, some people who are auditing today are maybe prioritizing certain things. So maybe they audit their LTL, but they don't audit small parcel because they don't have the time to do both. So they're kind of picking and choosing, well, we have time to dedicate a resource to check our LTL, but not our small parcel, or maybe they check, just shipments over a certain value because that's kind of what we have the time for. But with our system, we don't have to think about that. We don't have to just prioritize certain shipments to audit. We're going to audit every shipment with every carrier that you have. And with that, we're going to look through all these different audit points we have here. So when we're looking at your parcel invoices, we're looking for late deliveries. We're looking for shipments that were voided, but maybe you were still charged for. Duplicate charges, where the carrier charged you in your last invoice for this tracking number, but then they added it to another invoice and they actually duplicated that. Address correction and residential surcharges, and if that's actually a valid charge, if it was a valid change, or maybe the address was totally fine, but they still charge you for it. We're looking at, did it get delivered on time for the service that you paid for? Or maybe it's eligible for a guaranteed service refund because it was late. So we're looking at all these different audit points here. I didn't go through all of those, but you guys can kind of see the rest there. And then for LTL, we're checking some of those same things with, duplicate charges, residential audit, but we're also checking, your accessorials. Did they add any that you shouldn't, or they shouldn't have added, or you didn't, have on there? Other surcharges, fuel surcharges. So we're kind of checking through all those things and flagging anything that we find where you were charged something that you shouldn't have been. So everything we just talked about is kind of having to do with, if the carrier invoiced you accurately according to your contract and what you booked. So we're looking through and we're saying, hey, did you get booked or billed the right amount according to your negotiations and what was actually, booked? But there's a whole other side of the conversation of, well, did you book the right service in the first place? Were you adding the right, accessorials and additional charges, or did you not include those in the quote? So your customer didn't actually pay for certain things that maybe you should have quoted them for. So that's kind of what we call reconciliation. So I'm going to go to my next slide here. So reconciliation is about making sure that you're accurately rating shipments up front to help with spend planning and making sure that you're charging your customers what you should have for shipments. So not only do we want to make sure the invoice was accurate and they charge you according to your negotiations, but we also want to say, hey, did the invoice match what you booked? Did they change dimensions? Did they, change the weight? Did they add lift gate when the shipment actually required it? And you probably should have included that up front, right? So looking at that data can help you adjust your rating rules in ShipHawk to make sure in the future you can cover those things that you maybe missed in the past. So maybe we find out that you're getting charged an additional handling fee for some reason for certain shipments, right? Because the dimensions are incorrect or something like that. And so maybe we want to kind of look at your box sizes and see, well, what's happening here? Is your box size actually larger than we have in the system? Are people kind of booking it wrong? Are they putting in the wrong dimensions? Do we maybe want to add an additional markup to your upfront rates? So we include, you're getting some extra $10 fee for a lot of your shipments. Do we want to just include that into the rate to make sure your customer is actually covering that charge? So we want to look at those things and help you plan for that and say, not only, did I get charged for what I booked, but did I book the right thing? And am I rating the right thing up front? So we have all this data. We're flagging all those discrepancies, extra charges. So now what? Well, with that data, we're going to make reports on all the extra charges your carriers invoiced you, so we can actually go back to your carriers and get that money back. So that's where automated recovery comes in. So instead of you having to go to your carrier rep or direct to the carrier and try and get credit back and recover those costs, we can actually do that for you and initiate that recovery process, track that recovery response from the carriers, and then you can track what was requested and what you actually got back. So you don't have to have us do this. If you want, you can leverage our reports and do this yourself if you want to handle that back and forth. But generally, I recommend just have us handle the side of the process for you as well, right? If you're going to, simplify your audit process, just have us do it all and take all that time out of the process for you. and we can make sure that we get that credit back from your carriers. And an important thing here is that some carriers have timelines on this, and they'll only give you, 2 weeks to dispute a charge. So we'll make sure that we get that process started so you guys can get that money back when they've charged you for the wrong amount. So that recovery side of the process is a whole nother ballgame, right? So first you got to figure out, what did they charge me? Was it right? Was it wrong? And then, hey, it was wrong. Now I need to actually go back and forth between the carrier and say, well, I want this credit back. You got to figure out how they're going to give you that credit back. Some of them invoice that to the original invoice, and then you got to say, well, can you please move that to a future invoice? So there's a lot of different things that happen there. But we can kind of take over that process for you, make sure we get those initiated and send the customer, well, you know what, you charged, 20 address correction fees that were not valid. I want to go ahead and get those fees back, credit those to my future invoices. So if this is something that interests you, definitely reach out to us so we can get that conversation started and start doing that recovery for you. But there's more here. So we talked about centralizing your invoices, normalizing them, flagging the audit points and extra charges, and recovering that money from your carriers. But we've got one last thing to take a look at, which is our reporting and analytics. So let's jump into that. So along with all those things we've discussed, ShipHawk Audit's also going to give you the tools to be able to visualize the data and run reports to see what's happening with your shipments and use that to drive decisions. And you can even create your own dashboards as well. So we're going to jump back into the platform and actually take a look at some of our dashboards and the data that they contain, as well as our reports. You're getting a little sneak peek here with some of the screenshots that's showing, hey, your top accessorial spend. You know where those surcharges and fees are coming from. Your shipment spend across different states, regions, and internationally. We're going to map all that out and visualize it for you. I'm not going to go into all of these different ones, but we're going to take a look at a couple. Also, I got a question here. Let's take a look. Oh, that's a good question, Roy. Roy's asking about a customer refusing delivery and charges $75. Would automated recovery reach out to the customer in this scenario? I'm actually going to let Josh answer that. He's on the call here as well. So I'll let him kind of answer that in the chat and let you know what we can do there. So we'll continue as Josh is answering that, and you guys can all kind of see that once that gets answered. So let's jump into the platform here. I'm going to go in and take a look at some of our dashboards here. So we've got a ton of dashboards. I'm not going to go into all of these just for sake of time, but I'm going to go into a couple of them so you can kind of get an idea of some of the data we have available for you. So let's go into our delivery dashboard here. So, right, all kinds of different visualizations on all these different boards here. And we've got all kinds of things you can kind of add. And again, you can customize your own dashboards as well. But let's take a look at delivery with status, right? So how many shipments are arriving late? And all these dashboards are completely interactive. So you can drill into those and say, well, let's look at those late shipments, right? Well, where are those coming from? So it's going to tell you, hey, these are the services that are generally applying late. And then I can even drill in further and say, well, let's look at that ground residential. And it'll tell me, well, when are those occurring, right? When are those shipments happening? All kinds of data you can kind of drill into here. If you guys want to look into this and see what's really going on there. Bunch of other visualizations, but let's actually kind of jump over to another one. Let's go to our spend and count by state. So we can see our spend by receiver state and our count by receiver state as well. Compare those side by side, right? And kind of see the difference between, what's more expensive and based on that count per spend, right? We've got our spend and now we've got a bunch of other dashboards here as well, but let's jump into our spend analysis. I'm going to go down to that accessorial spend there. Same thing here. Let's look at that top accessorial spend and the top count here. And you can see, well, where are all those charges coming from? What am I actually getting here that's kind of bringing a bunch of extra costs, right? Residential surcharge is kind of big here. Delivery area, fuel surcharge, right? Just gives you a really good way to visualize what's actually happening with your shipments, where that money is coming from, and what you're getting charged for. So a bunch of things here. We've also got a whole host of target maps and heat maps that you guys can leverage and kind of drill into and say, hey, let's look at my spend by receiver state. I can even drill in and see that by, county here, right? All kinds of data that's going to be available to you that you guys can leverage for any, internal initiatives, anything where you kind of are wanting to figure out what's really happening, what's that distribution of our shipments, where are things going, can help you with all kinds of different decisions there. So we'll talk more about that, but let's jump into our reports as well. We've got a whole set of powerful reports that kind of supplement these dashboards as well. And so our reports allow you to export the data see the cumulative data by carrier across all your carriers, right? However you want to view it. And you can have them also scheduled to send to you and other employees. So you can always access these reports and kind of get them whenever you want from the system. But if there's one that you often want to see, you can actually just have that sent to your email every week or however often you want it. So you get that right away and you can kind of view that and do what you want with that. So let's take a look at a few of those reports. We have all kinds of reports here. And you'll kind of see as I scroll through this enormous list of reports, everything we've got. Again, I'm not going to go into all these. We're going to pick a couple of them so I can show you guys a few of those. So I've gone ahead and generated a couple of these here. Again, you can always schedule these however you want to get sent to whoever you want to kind of make this more efficient for you, or you can just generate them at any time when you want. So I'm going to pull up some of these. Let's start with our payment report here. So our payment report can be really helpful because this report tells you, based on your invoice, what should you pay? So we're looking for those credits and those places where they charge you something they shouldn't have. And we're going to flag those and we'll say, hey, for this invoice right here, right? They charge you this amount. We happen to find $731 of credits that they shouldn't have charged you for. So we recommend when you pay that invoice, actually just pay this amount right here. And this is kind of a preemptive way to take out some of that back and forth, right? Because I mentioned this before, but FedEx, for example, when they credit you back for an invoice, they actually credit it onto the original invoice. And then you have to go request and say, hey, can you actually put that on a future invoice, right? I don't want to just sit in there. It's not doing anything. I want you to actually move that to a future one. So this one can help you kind of, if you want to do that, just pay up front this amount. And we know what all these credits came from. So we'll kind of send them, well, here's everything we found, why they didn't pay the $731. And it can prevent some of that back and forth by just paying the right amount up front, right? So payment report can be really cool, really helpful way to see what you should actually pay. Let's jump into our audit checks here. Actually, that's our address correction. Let's go to this one here. I like our audit checks. It shows you every time we found something, we flagged something in our audit that said, hey, you should get this refund back because of this reason. So it's going to show you account number, carrier, tracking number, and invoice number, right? All your different amounts here, the total charges for that tracking number, a bunch of things about the shipment, where's it going, where's it from, et cetera, et cetera. And then over here, you'll see, okay, what did we flag here? So guaranteed service refund, right? You guys paid for 1 day or 2 days. They didn't arrive on that time. So you should actually get that refund of that whole charge back if you haven't waived that, right? Residential audit, they charge you for that and they shouldn't have. Void audit, duplicate charge, right? They've already charged you for this invoice. And so we'll kind of flag what was that flag that we found. So that way you can get a good idea of where those charges are coming from. And again, you can use our reports to send to your carriers as well. If you want to handle that recovery process on your own and say, hey, FedEx, here's every time you charge me for address correction where you shouldn't have, and you can literally send them our exact report. It's got all the tracking numbers, all the invoice numbers. We've got an address correction one, right? So you can handle that if you want, or you can have us handle that whole side of the process. But really easy way to just visualize, where are we getting those credits back? What are we seeing your carriers charge you for that they shouldn't be? Another one we'll jump into is address correction here. I like our address correction audit because it kind of shows you where all those address corrections are coming from. My favorite part about this is our recurring address corrections. So we've actually seen customers come to ShipHawk, get freight audit, send some shipments and then look at their data and see that they're getting the same address corrected. We've seen 25, we've seen 37 times because they've got a customer that's ordering from them a lot and their address is wrong and it's never getting changed. And so every time they ship to them, they're getting that address correction charge of, $19.50, or some of them are $9.75, right? Different charges for different carriers and different reasons, but they're getting that every single time. And so what we show you here is, hey, you've got some address corrections that have come up multiple times, same address that you're getting charged for, right? And you'll see for these, it's happened twice. So you can actually use this report to say, well, show me that old address. It shows you the old information, it shows you the new information, and you can go up to update that address in your ERP so you don't deal with that address correction ever again. Really powerful tool, again, to kind of stop that from happening more. So not only do we have kind of the recovery after the fact of they charge you for something, let's go get that credit back, but we have tools like this that can help you prevent those extra charges in the first place, right? Or make sure we're covering for those charges in your upfront rating and say, hey, you're running into this charge with this package, add a markup every time you're shipping that kind of box or that kind of package to make sure you're having the customer cover that charge. So there's some preventative stuff as well, and some, kind of ways to avoid those charges. Last one I'll look at today is our parcel trend and performance data report. This is just a really good way to get a snapshot here of what's going on month by month. And so you can see, hey, for this, period, how many shipments did I send? What was my total cost there? Cost per shipment, cost per pound, all kinds of ways you can view that. Who are you shipping those with, right? Percentage wise, to kind of visualize that. What are your top 10 services and top 10 accessorials that you're seeing? So just good data to kind of use to get a good picture and then maybe make some new decisions on how you want to rate things and how you want to handle your shipments as well. And then we also kind of even show you some process improvement opportunities, right? So we kind of show you, hey, here's how many address corrections you had. Maybe you want to go check your addresses or validate those up front. Make sure you're validating addresses in ShipHawk before you ship if you're not using that today. Declared value surcharges, right? Or whenever you're using those premium services, those are pretty expensive. Do you need to use that? Or maybe you could have used a cheaper service in that case, because those can really add up, even if you just use a couple of them. So really good way to just kind of get that screenshot. Again, this is one of those reports that you can have scheduled to send to you. Your warehouse manager can say, hey, I want to get this once a week or once a month. Well, once a month really in this case, because I'm looking at month by month. But right now I want to see this. So I get that data, coming right to my email, and then we can kind of make decisions based on that. Awesome. So we've got another question. After customers have implemented the solution, what ROI have you seen? Yeah, great question. So really depends on if you're talking parcel or LTL, and then also kind of what your negotiations are. So for parcel, we generally see kind of a 1 to 3% return for us finding recovery on your shipments, right? LTL can be all over the board. LTL is pretty common to see duplicate charges, or some bigger discrepancies there. So it really depends on kind of your quantity of shipments, but what we can always do is kind of talk through your shipments, talk through your specific use cases, and kind of give you an estimate on that. For parcel, it also depends, have you waived that guaranteed service refund, right? Or different things in your negotiations that impact that as well. But I'm always happy to kind of talk more about that, specifically, getting on a call and kind of walking through that. Pay process for ShipHawk. I'm not a pay girl. Josh is going to answer this. I don't know any of our pay things, so I'll let Josh go ahead and answer that, and he can kind of give you that. Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great. We got to answer that one. So for payments today, the platform does not have ability to pay the carriers. What we help you do is know how much you should pay for the carriers. Let's say you're shipping with RNL and you do 30 shipments in a given week. They send you all of the invoices and separately as different PDFs. This platform will bring them all in, review those charges, and at the end of the week, you can run a report that says, here is the sum total of all of your RNL invoices. You would then pay based off of that that report that we can generate for you and we can automate for you.
Yes. Also, I'm glad that Josh answered that, because I read your question so fast. I didn't even read that properly. Yeah, you guys will still be paying your carriers directly. And then we can kind of handle, looking at when there should be recovery, when there's credits, things like that. Awesome. So that's a little bit about our audit platform. Obviously, you just got a snapshot today. We've got all kinds of additional dashboards, additional reports, right? There's a lot more there, but just wanted to give a good overview of those different pieces of bringing in all those invoices, centralizing those, normalizing those, flagging those audit points, and actually checking for when you guys should get credits back, doing that automated recovery, and then giving you all that data as well. And one thing that those reports and dashboards can be really helpful for is not just for your own internal initiatives to kind of see what's going on with your data, see what's happening with shipments, but it also really can be helpful in your carrier negotiations. So knowing a lot of detail about your shipments and what you're using can help you go, to negotiations really prepared for, hey, what services are we using a lot of? What do we want to prioritize in those negotiations, or accessorials, or things that are coming up in your shipping, so that you're better prepared to have those conversations with your carriers when your year comes up and you want to go back and do those negotiations. So there's an additional side of those reports and dashboards that can be really helpful in that case. So that's a little bit about audit. As always, if you guys want more info, you can always reach out to learn more at shiphawk.com. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Kelly.
Yeah. Did somebody else have a question or comment?
There were a couple of questions about kind of the pricing model on this. And so just wanted to address that briefly. First of all, I'd be glad to set up one-on-one calls if you do want to get into more details. But really the pricing model here is there's a base price to access the platform that gives you access to all of the automation, all of the reviews, all of the reporting and such. And that's just a flat fee that's linked to your ShipHawk contract. If we do automated recovery, there is an additional gain share portion for parcel only. We actually have a team that reaches out to the carriers and submits those reports. Generally, almost all the customers that use this, they find that there is a direct ROI. The platform generally covers its costs in almost all scenarios. But if you do have any specific questions, I'd be glad to set up a call and discuss what your pricing would look like and what sort of ROI you should expect based on your particular shipping profile.
Yeah, also we got a question about the invoices being loaded. Is it done automatically or would an employee have to manually do this each month? So no, you would not have to manually do it. We'll work with you to get those invoices directly into our platform. We'll work with you at the beginning to make sure we kind of have those set up and then they're all good to go, depending on how you get those. So we can, in some cases, depending on the carrier, connect directly to your billing portal and get those. We can get those in through EDI from the carrier. We can get those emailed to us or actually mailed to us, and then we'll have someone entering those. So no, your employees would not need to manually enter invoices at all. We want to take that whole piece out of the process, so you guys don't have an employee going around and collecting all those and trying to translate them into Excel or into some kind of data to go ahead and upload. So we'll work with you, take a look at what carriers you're using, and make sure we can get those invoices directly from the carrier.
Yeah, and then the final question here that was asked, what differentiates this product from other tools that are similar to this? There's a few different distinctives about ShipHawk. One is that it has both a comprehensive parcel and LTL. There are some out there that will do parcel only. They're all highly automated. We find, and we have heard from customers that have switched over to using ShipHawk Audit, that the rate of return that you will get from ShipHawk Audit is higher. And that's really based on the thoroughness of our reports, the fact that we actually have a team that will submit these to the carrier and follow up with the carrier on your behalf. Some of the other platforms that are out there, it's purely automated and you kind of get what you get. The other really distinctive piece about ShipHawk Audit is because we are doing your fulfillment and your invoice review and the audit, we can give you the reconciliation module to not only go through your invoices, make sure that we are identifying those fees that get charged, but we can also give you the data to say for a given shipment, here's what you expected to pay at the time of fulfillment, and here's what you were actually invoiced, and allow you to drill into that and reconcile when there are differences.
Awesome.
Yeah, so having that shipment data up front and knowing exactly how it was booked is really beneficial. So obviously some other options are only looking at the invoice data. They don't know how it was booked, dimensions, weight, all that stuff that was happening, that it actually was booked with. We have that because you're using ShipHawk to, do those shipments as well. Awesome.
All right. I think that covers all of the questions. If you do have questions that we did not get to today, please send an email to that learnmore@shiphawk.com. If it's too much to type in, you just want to set up a demo or have a further conversation, just put that in an email. I personally will see those and I can have the right person. I can have Josh or your account manager or the best person reach back out to you to have a further conversation. And as I mentioned, Autumn, if you'll jump to the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a deep dive session coming up on this, on the audit solution with Josh later this month that really, kind of does a deeper dive into how it works and kind of the benefits or the, the best uses to really get the most benefit from the solution. So we'll certainly make sure to send emails out for that. Like I mentioned, also, I put the link in the chat earlier to our landing page that includes all of our previous demos as part of this series. So you can go there to preview any of the past ones or register for the next one that is going to be our handheld dimensioner. So that'll be the last and final session in our series. So definitely encourage you to take a look at those. And as I mentioned, please reach out if you have any questions, and hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.